It was a typical Friday evening in late autumn when the smell of cinnamon filled our small kitchen, mingling with the savory aroma of baked chicken. I stood at the counter, brow slightly furrowed as I sliced into a hot loaf of bread. The warmth of the oven wrapped around me like a comforting embrace, but in my chest an unsettling chill had settled. Jasmine should have been home by now. I glanced at the clock. 6:30. She usually called if she was running late. We always shared this meal together, each bite a thread binding us tighter amidst the chaotic tapestry of our lives. Yet tonight, a thin slice of anxiety gnawed at me like a hungry rat. I tried to shake the feeling as I pulled the bread out of the pan, its golden crust inviting. The kids had already devoured their dinner upstairs, enthralled by a movie while I prepared the table for our family tradition. I set out the plates, hoping Jasmine would burst through the door with her laughter, her cheeks flushed from the cold outside. But with every glance at the clock, that hope soured a little more. Finally, the front door creaked open, and the sound sent a heat wave of relief rushing through me. I turned around to see Jasmine, her dark hair cascading over her shoulders, as if she had just walked off the pages of a magazine. But as my smile widened, her gaze flickered past me, vague and distant. She dropped her bag by the door but didn't meet my eyes. "Hey, everything okay?" I asked, trying to suppress a frown. "Yeah," she replied. The word felt flat, lifeless. I served dinner in the dim light, my pulse quickening as silence stretched between us, a chasm that seemed to widen with each passing moment. I noticed the way her fingers fidgeted with the edge of the napkin, how she avoided the garlic roast I made, her favorite. The bread felt heavy in my hands, and with every chew, I could sense a change in the air, thick, tense, like an impending storm. I probed gently. She shrugged, shaking her head as if to dismiss my question. "Just a long day." I accepted her words, but an unsettling feeling twisted in my stomach. Something felt off, and not just tonight. Over the past weeks, I had noticed small shifts: the extra hours at the office, late-night texts that kept her glued to her phone, the faint scent of something floral lingering on her clothes. It was hardly enough to accuse, merely whispers of discontent that nagged at the corners of my mind. But what made my heart race wasn't just the fear of betrayal, it was the doubt that clawed at the foundations of our life together. I hadn't wanted to believe my instincts. The long, reassuring years of shared laughter and love crept in, holding my trust hostage. Yet, each passing day seemed to peel back the layers of her happiness like the last leaves of autumn, bare and exposed to the biting chill of winter's approach. Later that night, as I lay beside her in bed, the space between us felt like an abyss. Even her breathing felt like a secret, something I wasn't privy to. I reached over, my fingers grazing her arm, but she stirred away, defensive and unyielding. So close, yet a million miles apart. A night full of fitful sleep left me raw, and I found myself scrolling through the bank app on my phone the next morning. As I checked our accounts to prepare for the week ahead, something caught my eye: a charge for a hotel far from home. The image of a room, a stranger, two entwined figures danced menacingly behind my eyelids. My heart skipped, the pulse of betrayal pounding through my veins. I forced my breathing to remain steady as I pulled up my laptop. A few clicks later, I found myself typing the name of the hotel into an online search. My heart raced as I stared at the pictures: the soft lighting, the plush beds, the allure of romantic getaways. It was too quiet, too perfect. It dawned on me that she had been hiding more than her late nights. Her secrets lay buried under layers of deception, tightly wrapped in a glossy package. I swallowed hard. I wanted answers, clarity, perhaps even revenge for the hidden years of her affair that were festering beneath our lives. As dawn crept through the curtains, illuminating the chaos in my mind, I made my decision. No longer would I be a passive spectator in a life crafted by lies. Her laughter wouldn't drown out my swelling storm. She had painted an illusion, and with the truth, I would reclaim everything she had taken from me. The sun set on a gray November day, wrapping the world outside in a blanket of muted colors. As the evening crept in, I prepared myself in the living room, pacing the hardwood floor while my heart raced. Jasmine had agreed to meet for a casual dinner at home, but I knew this would not be an ordinary meal. The weight of what I had discovered hung heavy in the air, and the finality of our conversation loomed like a storm ready to break. When she walked through the door, her expression flickered momentarily with confusion at the sight of the table laid out with warm food, our favorite dishes now tainted with the knowledge of her betrayal. I could see the surprise in her eyes, but as she stepped inside, she plastered on a smile that felt rehearsed, a mask crumbling under the impending truth. "Wow, you went all out," she said, her voice bright but tinged with unease. sit down, Jasmine. We need to talk. My tone was steady, urgent, and completely unyielding as I gestured to the chair across from me. Her brow furrowed. What's wrong? At that moment, I realized she didn't even know I had uncovered her lie, the facade she had held onto for the last few years. With a deep breath to anchor myself, I placed my phone on the table, the screen illuminating with images of the hotel charges, flight confirmations, and plans laid out with meticulous care. Wrong, I echoed. Not a lot when you have a secret life, is there? Her face paled as the color drained from her features. What are you talking about? A slight tremor caught her voice, but she bit her lip, clearly trying to regain composure. Don't play innocent, Jasmine. You've been lying. For years, I said, my voice rising a notch with each syllable as I slid the phone closer to her. I highlighted the hotel charges and the incriminating details, forcing her to confront her choice head-on. The air tensed like a catapult ready to snap. Her hands shook as she picked up the phone, her expression flipping from confusion to dread. The silence swelled around us, thick and suffocating, charged with an energy that could ignite the room. How did you find out? She whispered, her voice cracking. It doesn't matter how I found out, I replied, leaning forward. What matters is that you have betrayed our family. You think I would remain in the dark while you flitted around with someone else? Did you even think about the kids? Her eyes darted away, the weight of her guilt suddenly anchoring her shoulders. I can explain, she stammered, searching my gaze for a shred of sympathy. Explain, I scoffed, rising to my feet. A whirlwind of rage and hurt culminating into a storm I could no longer contain. You say that while you've been living a double life, pretending to be the devoted wife, the lovely mother, while I've been here, in this house, working my fingers to the bone. Please, let's talk. No, my voice was sharp as glass cutting through the tense air. You wanted to toss everything we built into the fire for a cheap thrill. And now that it's out, you'll have to come to terms with the consequences. Her expression hardened as she adopted a defensive posture. You don't understand. It wasn't just that. You've changed so much over the years. I felt lonely. Her tone was a firebrand, igniting my already simmering anger. Lonely? So that justifies your betrayal, I raged, each word a stepping stone toward the resolve welling up within me. Maybe you seek freedom or adventure, but I refuse to be the one shackled by your choices. You will face the consequences of your irresponsibility. Consequences, she echoed incredulously. You don't have to be like this. We can work through it. The raw intensity of the moment crystallized into clarity. I stepped back a fraction, allowing the silence to wash over me as anger faded to cold determination. I am not the one who needs to work through anything, Jasmine. You're the one who needs to face what you've done. In that instant, I pulled back the curtain of betrayal, revealing the new plan I had spun in my mind, mapping out every strike I would take against her lies, every piece of leverage I could gain. I would fight to reclaim our life and take back every shred of dignity she had stripped away. I'm freezing our joint accounts and consulting with a lawyer next week. I'm filing for divorce, and I'll make sure that I gestured broadly around us, this mess doesn't come without consequences. You will not be walking away unscathed. For the first time, I saw fear settle in her eyes, an emotion I had longed to see bubbled to the surface, a taste of the reality I'd so desperately wanted her to acknowledge. The power began to shift, and I savored that tantalizing rush. It felt as intoxicating as the many years of trust she had torn down. Wait, you can't just decide that, she shouted, voice laced with panic. What about the kids? You wouldn't take them from me. You can't. The solidity of her standing began to crumble under the weight of my words. The kids? You think it will be easy to face them with this reality? You've chosen your path, now you'll face the truth of losing them as well. Don't you dare! Her voice grew frantic. The mask she had tried to uphold started to fade, revealing raw desperation. With the stakes raised higher than I could have anticipated, I watched the rage in her grow, its heat melting away the veneer of calm we had maintained, the destination we had once traveled together. I was no longer her partner, I was now her reckoning in this fractured partnership. Don't share your threats with me. This isn't my waking nightmare. You made your bed, and now you will lie in it. My lips barely closed around the words, each one imbued with newly found strength. As she grappled with her reality, I realized that this was only the beginning. I had taken the first step into claiming what was rightfully mine, a return to justice in the twisted design of betrayal. And as the truth seeped into every crevice of our shattered life, I steeled my heart for what was still to come, because this was only the beginning of a war that would take everything from her. Weeks turned into months as the divorce proceedings unfolded, each day revealing new facets of the betrayal I'd suffered at Jasmine's hand. The once vibrant life we had built together transformed into a battlefield, with every hearing in court, every argument with our lawyers, a stark reminder of the pain deeply embedded in my heart. I felt both vindicated and a bit hollow. The echoes of our shattered commitment reverberated in the corners of my mind. With each passing day, however, I began to recognize the strength I was cultivating within myself, a resilience I had never fully acknowledged before. I wasn't just a victim beaten by the onslaught of betrayal, I was a man reclaiming his life and power. The courtroom was tense on the day the judge would hand down the final ruling on our divorce. I clutched the stack of documents in my hands, painstakingly compiled evidence that backed my claims: emails, photos from the hotel, text messages exchanged in secrecy. Each item was a jagged piece of glass reflecting the truth of our relationship and Jasmine's deceit. As the judge entered the room, I felt my heart race. Jasmine sat across from me, her hands clasped nervously in her lap, trying to maintain her composure. Yet, the flicker of unease in her eyes unraveled her facade. Deep down, she knew this day was not in her favor. After the preliminary statements had been made, the judge looked down at the materials scattered before her. The silence in the courtroom was deafening as she began to summarize the case. Given the substantial evidence of infidelity and the significant financial implications stemming from that betrayal, I award the petitioner, Mr. Wells, the majority of the marital assets, including real estate, investments, and joint accounts. As those words sank in, a wave of triumph surged through me, rushing like the tide reclaiming land once lost to erosion. I glanced at Jasmine, her face twisted with disbelief, every breath tightening the knot inside her gut. The consequences of her choices bore down upon her like a blanket of cold reality, even as the weight of vindication lifted some of mine. "But Your Honor," she started, her voice rising in desperation. "That's not fair. I have been the primary caretaker of the children. I deserve." "The court acknowledges your role as a caretaker," the judge interjected firmly, her gaze unwavering. "However, your actions, which led to the dissolution of this marriage, are the key factors in determining asset division." Each word from the judge felt like a hammer striking the anvil of our lives, shaping the way forward, severing the ties that bound us with a single blow. I stood taller in that moment, embodying my growth, a man transformed from a lover deceived to a rightful victor. The gavel came down hard, signaling the end of the tumultuous chapter, yet marking the beginning of something new. I would no longer be tethered to Jasmine's life. Instead, I would craft my own without her shadows looming overhead. As I left the courthouse, I felt lighter, an exhilarating freedom washing over me. Shadows of bitterness dissolved with each step I took into the sunlight, even as Jasmine remained trapped in her upheaval. I had taken everything from her financially, yes, but more than that, I had stripped her of the illusion that everything would stay the same, that her life would continue on as if nothing had happened. The next few months were exhilarating and cathartic. I focused on the children, becoming more present in their lives, forging a bond that flourished in the light of honesty and love. We created new memories, filling our home with laughter that had once been absent. Friends who rallied around me had never felt more like family, and their support paved the way for new beginnings. Jasmine, on the other hand, spiraled into her own reality, dealing with the consequences of her choices alone. The whispers and judgment from peers at her workplace turned into a deafening roar, isolating her from those once close to her. The social ostracization hit her hard, magnifying the shadows I had cast over her world. I watched that bitter fruit of betrayal ripen as her secrets began to unravel, her reputation bit by bit, a view of poetic justice, yet I felt no satisfaction in it. Months later, I received a mutual text from a former friend of ours, someone sympathetic to my position. A lunch invite led to hesitant conversations about Jasmine. Underneath the layers of ambiguity, I learned that she'd lost her job, her friends untangled from her life, and the distance she created during our marriage left her alone in a house now echoing her choices. And yet, I didn't revel in this information. Instead, an unexpected pang of empathy ran through me. I wouldn't take my emotional energy and spend it on her suffering. Instead, I had chosen to weave a life of my own, one grounded in resilience and strength. The closure came slowly, through reflections of the past and the liberating realization that love doesn't cheapen around betrayal, it simply teaches you what true love should be. I'd learned more about who I was in those darkest moments than I had in years of trust. The man I had been married to was just a specter of my former self. I was now Alex, stronger, wiser, and ready for whatever was next. As I stood before a mirror months later, brushing off remnants of old pain, I saw a man reborn. I stepped into my new path, determined to write a vibrant story free from shadows, embracing not just the lessons learned, but the love waiting at the edges of my determination. In the end, it wasn't just Jasmine who bore the weight of betrayal, it was an opportunity for me to reclaim my life, emerging from the ashes of deception into the brightness of a future unchained by the past. And with every step forward, her echoes faded into obscurity, making way for a renewed sense of self, resilient and unwavering. I took everything she built, and in its place, constructed a life illuminated by hope, trust, and newfound joy.